Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. I'm live from the Arctic tundra of Northeast Georgia, and Joe Rayo is live from the heat box in the Hudson Valley. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. And of course, now that this quote unquote cooler weather has arrived for the Northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states, you might start thinking about wintertime and salt and how expensive rock salt is. Well, Omni's got the best prices in town. Also, Pelledo and Mag ice pellets and flakes and everything you need to get through the winter. 631-756-1125. OmniTrueValue.com is the website. Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. It's getting close to Halloween, so you're probably a little late for that, but you can get to them for Christmas. They've got wreaths, garland, Christmas balls, Christmas trees, and all those lovely little statues of Santa and his elves. Whether you want your home decorated or maybe you want to do this as a business or this is your business, they're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York. Their phone number is 631-957-5106, and the website is liholidaylighting.com. So, Mr. Rayo, here we are. You can guess what my low temperature was this morning, and if you, if you can guess it within 2 degrees without going over, you'll get to spin that wheel and win potential to win $1,000 in a bonus spin.
How about 35 degrees?
Oh, you looked it up, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Really? 35. That was my low.
Wow.
That was the low. Actually, it was a little warmer here. It only got down to 39. That was the low at the Blairsville Airport, was 35. 35 this morning. And in fact, the only place in the United States that has any kind of frost advisory up is on the North Carolina side of me. As you head up into the southern Appalachians, they have a frost advisory up for tonight for a handful of counties. Meanwhile, did you get below?
For all of you out there who voted and said that I would get to freezing before Joe, or that I would see the first frost advisory before Joe, how do all of you feel now?
Yes, exactly. And your low this morning after the cold front passed?
I didn't even check. I can tell you that we had a copious amount of rain, something on the order of about almost 3/4 of an inch.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't see most of this because I was visiting my mother in the Bronx. And did you hear that?
What's that?
It was 48.
48. I beat you by 13 degrees.
Yes.
See, I got my hot cup of coffee. It's keying out a little bit. Let me see if I can you see it there? There's my mug. It keeps keying out. So I've got my hot cup of coffee, and I had to actually had to turn the heat on because the house temperature dropped down to 60. So I turned on my heat to 62, which is where I keep it during the winter months, and I got my my hoodie. Whoops. I got my hoodie on to keep me warm, and JJ's lying down on the New York Giants blanket because that's about all it's good for.
Well, maybe they should be the ones that take a bye. Well, the Jets too. The Jets are pretty much in the same boat. They've got the bye week this week. But I was not here when all this happened. As I said, I was down in the Bronx visiting my mom and my sister, and Renata had her trusty iPhone, and she was watching the radar. We couldn't watch the radar, down where we were in the Bronx. Back in the day, I could turn on channel 61 and watch News 12 traffic and weather and be assured that I'd see a radar at least every 2 minutes, but they were showing some nonsense that had nothing to do with weather, so we had to rely on the iPhone.
What were they selling?
I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, between midnight and 6 in the morning, for example, nonstop, it's infomercials. And either they were showing something that had nothing to do with the weather or traffic. A news report, they call it News 12 Plus now. So you're getting additional information that you normally would have seen on News 12 now on Channel 61.
Additional information that you didn't ask for and you don't need.
Exactly. So, and the one thing I wanted was to look at a radar, so we had to rely on the iPhone, and it showed a very sharp, albeit narrow, but a very sharp and significant. Actually, there were two lines that moved on through my house last night. The first line was the one that obviously did a number on Renata's spike plants. These look like palm trees, but they're in big, gigantic buckets, and they're out front, and they're standing right along the driveway. Every single one of them was knocked down. The garbage pail knocked down. And I mean, it must have been quite a wind that came on through with that line of showers and storms last evening. But again, I saw none of it. When we got back last night, all we saw was a wet driveway. And but it's cool out there this morning, Joe. But as we talked about when we last were together last week, there's going to be a lot of instability out there today, and so it will probably
poor Sal Blandino. He is just, I can't even mention, it's gotten to where I can't even mention a cloud or a shower without him losing it. But you know, he settled down a little bit, though. I will say that he's better than what he was.
Well, we might see a shower, I think, or maybe a sprinkle before the day is over with. It's bright and sunny now, but it'll probably cloud over quickly after the noon hour, and that instability translating into perhaps a shower or sprinkle in a few spots before the end of the afternoon. Then under the cover of darkness tonight, it clears, and then we have some beautiful weather to look at, beautiful fall weather to look at for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and probably even for much of Thursday as well. And then an even stronger, looks like to me, Joe, a stronger push of chillier air moving our way for the end of the week into next weekend.
Yeah, no, I totally am in line on that. I mean, it's been the cold front that went through yesterday up and down the East Coast. That has to be the first front to go through in about 2 weeks. We've been sort of stuck in this sort of blocky ridge position here in the eastern United States, but that's changed now because everything is starting to move across from west to east. We're getting a little bit of Canada influence, but you might some of you may ask the question, well, you know, how come we've got a pattern that should bring down cold air? Well, how come it's not really doing that? I mean, we've got temperatures now that have although it's below normal here, no question. But I mean, it's brought things certainly back to at least near normal, maybe a shade below when you do all the averages out over the next day or two. But why isn't it any colder than that? And the reason is that for the last several weeks, there's been no cross-polar flow at all in Canada. It's all the air in Canada has actually been coming out of the southwest from the Pacific, running up to the northeast. So there's been no mechanism up there to manufacture some colder air, and it's going to take a while in this blocky pattern. I mean, I think eventually you're going to start to see some of those, you know, colder air masses, like you pointed out, maybe behind the front next late this week. That looks to be colder, but you know, it's been above normal temperature-wise in most of Canada. So until that corrects itself, we will have to just sit back and wait for let's call it genuine cold to come down. It will eventually, but just not right now.
Yes. And are you still? I saw something I have not seen in a very long time. We'll get to it, I'm sure, before this session is over. That at NHC they have posted nothing, nada, for the next 48 hours on their map. In fact, I think not only just for the Atlantic Basin, but for the Pacific and Central Pacific, quiet. Everything is quiet. Maybe the tropical story is over with. Well, then again, maybe not. I don't know.
As I've said it a few times, and I guess it's worth saying it again. There is a weak correlation between when hurricane seasons on the Atlantic side shut down early. There's a weak correlation with that and with the upcoming winter season. It's a weak correlation, but there is one there that would suggest that the East would be colder than average. The East is a big place, okay? We're talking every place east of the Mississippi. So it doesn't work exactly for every single spot, but again, a weak correlation from that standpoint. Also, a couple of things to note is the fact that the Central Pacific has not, now when we talk about hurricanes in the Central Pacific, we're talking about hurricanes that develop in the Central Pacific region, which is basically west of 140 degrees west to the international date line. There's not been a tropical cyclone or a tropical storm, a tropical cyclone of any kind, be it a storm, a depression, or a hurricane, to form in that region this season. And that actually is not unusual. They have, especially when you're in a La Nina pattern, that's colder than normal water temperatures on the Pacific side from around the equator. So it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't see tropical cyclones form in the Eastern Pacific. And in fact, I think if you go back, I don't remember the exact stretch of years. I want to say from 2012, 13, right on to through 2014, 15, somewhere in that stretch in there. There were 3 seasons in a row where the Central Pacific did not produce a single tropical cyclone. So, they went 3 years not seeing a storm form in that region because they have their own set of names. The other interesting thing I've been reading about, by the way, I just thought I'd bring it up because it's part of the climate change conversation, and I don't really want to go into it other than to mention the fact that I've seen a couple of stories about this, and I don't know, I follow Dr. Amy Butler, who I believe works out of Colorado State University. I'm not 100% sure on that part of it, but she's very big on, she's kind of the female version of Dr. Judah Cohen, and she puts a lot of stuff that is very highly technical. And admittedly, most of it I don't quite understand. But she posted up an interesting link to an interesting article about the fact that over the last 20 years, I mean, we talk about the lack of sea ice on the lack of sea ice in the Arctic, okay? But what doesn't get talked about often is the sea ice situation in Antarctica, which has been expanding for the last 20 years. And in fact, I did see something in the last week or so talking about the fact that the temperatures this past winter in it, because now they're going into their spring, they are in their spring, but the winter temperatures in Antarctica this year were some of the coldest on record. So it's kind of interesting that you've got this, the Arctic's doing one thing, the North Pole's doing one thing, the South Pole is doing something else. So I don't know if that, and I'm not bringing this up from the standpoint because all the the folks that are on one side of the debate or the other are going to point to that. No, yeah, well, they're going to point to it and say, you see, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. I'm bringing this up because, and she even said she doesn't quite understand it. They don't know why this is happening. The initial blame was, well, it's because of the hole in the ozone that was in the southern hemisphere. Well, that hole is gone. It's closed up, so they can't. So that's not the reason. So it's just kind of interesting that you've got the two opposite things have been happening over the last 15 or 20 years. The warmer North Pole and the colder South Pole.
You know what I think, Joe? I think you or I should go to Antarctica or go to the South Pole and investigate ourselves, and then come back and tell everybody what one of us have seen. So I guess we'll have to work on that over the next.
Yeah, you know what?
In the coming weeks.
I think it's a good idea that you should go to to Antarctica to investigate. I totally agree with that. But if you decide to go on this experimental journey that you want to go on, may I suggest that you line up interviews with the Adelie penguins, the emperor penguins, the leopard seal. The leopard seal would make a very good interview. And if you run into an occasional, right, and if you run into the occasional orca, okay, you might think about, we'll getting them on the show.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if one of us does get down there, I'm sure one of us will set up some kind of a situation where we would be live and in person from Antarctica, and that would be a feather in our cap, wouldn't it?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, what weather show could really tout the idea that, here we are. You're in one place, I'm in another, and well, why not? Let's get the Antarctica angle into all of this.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Okay. All right. Let me just got a couple of little buttons to click here as we go. Oh God, I closed something that I wanted to close, and then I just accidentally just opened it again. So just give me a moment here. I'll bring up the. I'm going to bring up the U.S. coast to coast watches and warnings map, and I'm bringing it up if only to showcase the fact that there ain't nothing going on. I mean, you've got, I mentioned earlier, look in Western North Carolina, right along the Tennessee state line. And that's right up the spine of the Appalachians there, going from Murphy, North Carolina, which is where, if you cross the border to the other side here, 20 miles from here where I am, you're in North Carolina. So there's a handful of counties in Western North Carolina under a frost advisory. I think, let me see, yes, these are 4 counties in northeastern California that have a winter weather advisory and a few wind advisories, and one county even has a high wind warning, and that's about it. Nothing in Alaska either. Alaska's nice and quiet. Hawaii is quiet. This has been a snooze fest of a month when you think about it.
Well, yeah, and that having been said, aside from, again, maybe interestingly, when we were in this type of a weather pattern, I always find that we get like a long stretch, a protracted spell of 3, 4, 5 days of dry weather, and then when we finally do see precip, it's like as if the precipitation is trying to make up for all the days where we weren't seeing much of anything. Case in point, yesterday, Joe, and we had dry weather for several days here, but when we did finally open the door and see precip come, it came with a wallop, short-term wallop, but I mean, I could attest to that. And again, it looks like the next go-around, the next chance for seeing any kind of wet weather around here won't come our way until Friday. And incidentally, if you recall, the forecast for yesterday, originally, the folks over at the Storm Prediction Center said predictability too low.
No, they said potential too low. Potential too low.
Okay, potential too low. But then they put us in an area of marginal severe, and then they changed that to slight chance of severe on Friday and carried it over into Saturday. And I can attest to the fact from looking at my property that it was every bit probably at least marginal, if not perhaps briefly severe in and around my area. So it just goes to show you that this far out, you may be able to say showers for, let's say, next Friday. Whether or not you can say thunderstorms, still a question mark. And even as you get closer in, still the question is, will they be severe? And probably you won't know until maybe the day before. But that's our next chance, I think, is next Friday for getting wet around here.
Yeah,
until then, it looks like high and dry.
Yeah, and to be fair, sometimes you can look at something 3 or 4 days before and say, you know what, this looks like it has severe weather potential. Sometimes you have to wait till you get there because you have to actually see just how unstable the atmosphere is going to be. I mean, you especially the lower part of the atmosphere. So that, I think, kind of explains what happened on yesterday from the forecast standpoint, because you could have looked ahead at Thursday and say, okay, there'll be some showers, maybe there'll be a few thunderstorms in the mix. but this didn't really look like a severe weather type event from that standpoint. Also, given the time of year, we are in the middle part of October, but as we got closer, the upper trough was stronger. The daytime heating yesterday was exceptional, really, with the sun. A lot of places had sunshine for a good chunk of the day, the good chunk of the heating part of the day, which is especially short. And the dew points got up into the mid 60s, which is not too shabby for mid October. But nothing going on the next few days anyway. If we look at the U.S. satellite loop, you can see the front is still pretty well defined offshore. And as Joe pointed out, because of the fact that you've got this upper trough in the eastern part of the United States, you've got a lot of this instability cloudiness that's up through Pennsylvania and upstate New York that's moving southeastward now. So that's going to get into the mix in the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states during the afternoon hours. That front, by the way, has gone all the way down into central Florida. Temperatures got down into the 40s all to the Florida state line this morning, so it was very, very cool. And you can see around the country of the satellite, very little happening, little disturbed weather there. In the southwest Gulf of Mexico, which is nothing more than an upper trough. And then if you look from the northwest Caribbean, northeastward out into the Atlantic, it's straight southwest winds aloft. So tropical cyclone development conditions are unfavorable and are going to likely remain so. I don't think this is going to, this obviously, Joe, doesn't look like last year where we were still banging out one after another from the standpoint of tropical cyclone development. I don't think you're going to see that here. I would kind of tend to think that we might shut down early. Maybe we'll get the odd named storm that'll form out somewhere in the Atlantic, or perhaps something comes out of the Northwest Caribbean late in the month or early November. But we're not going to see, we're done with that, regularity that we saw from the beginning of August to about Columbus Day.
Now what's going to happen tomorrow.
There'll be a tropical cyclone, somewhere. I get you.
No. Tomorrow is a day that especially all the winter weather fanatics look forward to every year.
Oh,
and actually,
yes.
Back in the day, they being NOAA, and I don't even know if back in the day they had, let's say 30, 40 years ago, they had a climate prediction center as they do now. But they used to wait until right after Thanksgiving to announce what the upcoming winter was going to be like in terms of temperature, in terms of precipitation. Now they seem to do it in October. They wait until the middle of October, and it looks like this year, Joe, it's going to happen tomorrow. Every month they do put out seasonal forecasts for, let's say, October, November, December, January, February, which would be meteorological winter. And they even go beyond that into next spring. But tomorrow, if I'm correct, they will make the announcement as to what meteorological winter, December, January, February, looks like for 2021, 2022. And before they have that chance, here at Joe and Joe, we are going to give you the jump on things, at least from what I think they're going to be showing, or somewhat what they're going to be showing tomorrow. I have looked at the forecast they made for that time frame, December, January, and February, back in mid-September. The last 3 month or the last period where they looked at that was in the middle part of September. And I have those graphics, and I don't honestly believe that they're going to change too dramatically from what they're going to announce to the world tomorrow. So I thought if you can give me sharing capability.
I already have.
I will now show you what likely you will see tomorrow from the folks at the Climate Prediction Center. We will start with the seasonal temperature outlook. Again, valid for what we call meteorological winter, the 3 coldest months of the year, December, January, and February. This is for 2021 into 2022. Notice the issue date, September 16th, 2021. They did not issue this on October 16th. October 16th was yesterday, a Saturday. Everybody was off. It was a day off for the folks, I guess, at the government. So and they didn't do it today. So in all likelihood, in order to fill the gap, they will be issuing their seasonal temperature outlook for December, January, February 2021, 2022, the new outlook tomorrow, October the 18th. And that, if everything falls into place, will be when they announce to everybody, here's our winter forecast. You could see, if you're a winter weather lover, this is not looking like good news, because based upon their last seasonal temperature outlook, above normal covers, I'd say at least 2/3 of the country. And we here in the East are seeing, well, let's see, this is what, 40 to 50. You know, I love the look of these maps, but I don't like you have to figure these things out here. I guess this is 40 to 50%, and I guess this is 50 to 60, and this is 60
Joe,
to 70%.
hang on 1 second.
Here,
hold on a second.
Well above normal.
Hang on, just no, only because I want to just check something with where are you? Oh, I can't do it. Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead. There was you're popping on the audio when we're on the Zoom when you're sharing the maps, which means that I've actually zeroed in on this issue. So that's a good thing. So I can maybe take a look at this later. But go ahead. Finish up. I'm going to mute myself for a moment just to make sure that's not causing a problem. And go ahead. Pick up on.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said, you could see that in this moderately dark shade of orange, that is above normal, more above normal for central and southern Florida. Equal chances. What does that mean? That means there's a coin toss, 50-50 split, that it might be above or below normal over the northern plain states, over the western Great Lakes, into parts of the Pacific Northwest, although well north and west, western sections of Oregon, it's below normal, and in extreme western Washington. I did. Hello. Hello. 1, 2. Oh. How about if I just shut up and I just bring up the map and everybody looks at it for about 10 seconds, or maybe you can make a comment. Okay. All right.
There we go. No, here I am. I'm back. I'm trying to fix. Yes, it apparently. Yeah, I know. Tell Mrs. Macy's that it's all settled.
He knows. He knows.
Okay, so apparently when you share maps on Zoom, a big audio issue develops. So now that we've unshared it, the audio issue went away. So there's the map. So this is the seasonal temperature map, right? So, yeah, and you got above in Florida and above just about everywhere. This is December, January, February, 3-month average. So if 1 month is very much high, well above average, it's not inconceivable, but the 2 months that follow could be near average or even below average. This is when you average out 90 days, okay? So a couple of good warm stretches could take you over the top and make this verify, and it might not necessarily reflect the kind of winter it is. Now, you go ahead. You keep talking. I'm going to see if I can fix this.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do, this is the seasonal precipitation outlook. And as you can see, there's for where we are here in the New York metropolitan area, we seem to be in the equal chances. So there's an equal chance of above normal or below normal. The above normal seems to be confined mostly in the eastern part of the country to the Great Lakes. Down in your vicinity, Joe, well, you're right on the edge between equal and a bit below normal. Below normal in South Florida and southern and northern Florida as well. It looks like Florida is going to have a winter, if they're right, that's going to be above normal temperature-wise, below normal precipitation-wise. That's a nice place maybe to spend a vacation this year. and over in the Southwest below normal. This is not good news because after all the wildfires and all of the terrible weather they had in the month of June, July, August, September, you would like to see, at least to replenish some of the water supply there, near or above normal precipitation. It looks like, according to the Climate Prediction Center, below normal across the southwestern states and in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. Well, what else do you expect? It's going to be vegetation,
Okay.
probably rain along the coast
Unshare.
and above normal in the mountains.
Unshare. Okay. Your audio was fine for just till the last 10 seconds of that. I don't know why it does that. That was really weird. Okay.
Oh, well.
My apologies. We tried to get as much of that in there without issues, but at least I know what the issue is now, so I can try to figure it out, that it's with Zoom, and we'll try to get that straightened in the long term. In the meantime, while you were doing that, I figured, why don't we look at the wonderful CFS model, which is probably one of the most volatile of model runs. I pulled up the monthly forecast. So let's see, and I'm going to tell you what I think NOAA's going to do. Okay, I can pretty much state that in a couple of sentences. NOAA will put out a forecast based on the developing week. They've proclaimed the other day that we do have a La Nina going on again. But it's a weak La Nina, but it is a La Nina. I think that they will put up a map that reflects a La Nina forecast, which would be consistent with the map that they had that you showed for the monthly forecast there. It'll be consistent with that, and then they'll throw in the caveat as far as the Northeast, that the blanket statement that they've been putting out for the past few years is that the North Atlantic Oscillation / Greenland block, that's something that is very volatile, and we can't forecast it. So that's the one that'll be the one fly in the ointment as far as it's concerned. I would be shocked if you got anything other than that. I would be shocked.
All right. Well, again, I maintain that what we just looked at, both in terms of temperature probability and also in terms of precipitation probability for the cold period, December, January, February, is not going to differ all that much from what you just saw based upon their September outlook. And again, tomorrow, they should be issuing their October outlook. They'll also, with some fanfare, announce that this is their official winter forecast. And if that be the case, what it shows for us is a milder than normal winter. They'll ballyhoo that, especially here in New York. Oh, it looks like the winter, according to the people at NOAA, it's going to be a mild winter, and they're not sure if it's going to be a wet winter or a dry winter. You know, the same BS.
Yeah,
and
I just find all this stuff in general. Not what you did. Not what you did or what you said, or I just find this obsession with that a lot of folks have, trying to figure out stuff 3 to 4 months ahead of time. It's just kind of a waste of time. They come when they come. I don't know if there's going to be a lack. Somebody, John Charles says, as a lack of nor'easters and inland rivers. Do we really know that? I mean, can we really look at last year? I mean, when you really look at last year as a whole, you had a 3-week period. You had a 3 to 4 week period from late November to just before Christmas, where we had a blocking pattern that set up, and we had cold weather, and we had one pretty decent snowfall out of it. Then we kind of went quiet, and of course we know we had thunderstorms and temperatures up at 70 on Christmas Eve. And down here they had a snowstorm with half a foot to a foot of snow on Christmas Eve. But then we wound up going through a period from late December through much of January where it was, really didn't do very much. And then we had another 3 to 4 week stretch there going into the month of February till about the till just past, say, the traditional Washington's birthday, where the pattern was very dynamic, and we had several snow events that ran through. So, I don't think until the forecast, for me, from a practical standpoint, until somebody can sit down today and say, this is how the winter is going to look like in the general area, and you pick whatever general area, and then give a forecast like I just did, explaining what actually happened last year. That at least is a little more practical. That at least, to me, says has a little more value to it. But nobody can do that now. Nobody can do that. So I don't know. I just don't. I don't get the obsession. I think it's a way of being, for it's a good way to get very disappointed if you're a snow lover or a cold weather lover. Now, I'm looking at CFS on the CFS forecast, by the way, which, we just talked about the fact of how warm it's been in Canada. Well, guess what? This is for the month of November, showing above normal temperatures up in Canada and below average temperatures in the southeastern part of the United States, because I'm here. Then on December, you're looking at just about the whole country. The whole country's above normal. Western Central Canada are actually below normal. January, slightly above normal to maybe a little bit more than that from Texas to New England. February, the whole South is burning up. Now suddenly all of Canada is cold. And then March, all of Canada and the northern tier are near or below normal. Everybody else is above. And then naturally you get into April, and it's normal to slightly below normal, clear down to the Carolinas. So I don't, yeah, this is the CFS, and if you look at the CFS model in a couple of days, you're likely to see something completely different. 2 weeks ago, it was having it cold for November, December, and near average for January and February. Now it's backed off on that. So I don't know. I'm not impressed with this sort of stuff anymore.
I think what you're going to see in the coming years ahead, and I think one of the Farmer's Almanac did that this year, is that rather than just try to broad brush everything and say, well, this part of the country is going to have below normal temperatures, and that part of the country is going to be wetter than normal, they actually tried to headline various times during the winter. I think they said January was going to be especially rough in terms of cold and snow, but then things were going to calm down during February. And I guess that's the way you have to, if you're going to do a long range forecast over a span of 3 months, and you just pointed this out, Joe, that there are going to be intervals when there's going to be a sudden change from what was forecast or what was initially predicted, that they're going to be, if you went for a warm winter, but you have a 2-week stretch where all of a sudden it got cold and snowy, that's what people are going to remember. In fact, I can tell you that if the forecast is for milder temperatures, and it is mild will probably be mild for the Northeast, you get a couple of weeks where it's like below normal, very cold, or even have one good nor'easter to drop a lot of snow, you're going to still have a lot of people walking around saying, I thought they said this was going to be a mild winter. What the heck is this I'm looking at outside? Yeah, but if you take everything in the overview from 1 December to 28 February and average it all out, it may end up being above normal. You're going to have those quirky periods of, below normal and snow, and then you're going to have more often than not warm and dry. You know what I'm saying? And it's in a way, it's a no-win situation.
Right.
What they say or what they predict tomorrow, they may say one thing, but if you get that little quirk of a few weeks where it's not falling into what was predicted overall, you're going to get a lot of people walking around saying, well, they blew it again. People don't want to look at averages. They want to look at specifics.
Right, exactly. Two comments on the chat board here that I just want to address. Keith James saying, and actually I think this fact makes a lot of sense. He says, why not embrace the warm weather so that your heating bills this winter won't be off the wall? And that is a very valid point, considering the state of the markets right now, the heating oil market, the oil market, and especially the natural gas market, where we've seen prices there double in the last couple of months, and that should be noted that if what's not priced into the price of nat gas, which has gone from $3 per cubic, whatever it is, to almost $6 per cubic, whatever it is. What is not priced in that natural gas price, what's not priced in, is if we have a front end loaded winter and we start to see if we start to see a colder looking November and December, the price of nat gas will go higher, okay? Because a cold start to the winter is not priced in, okay? Natural gas won't rally if the back end of the winter is going to be cold, because by then everybody looks at it at that point and saying, well, in a couple of weeks it'll be almost over with anyway. But the front end loaded winter possibility will drive prices even higher. So you are absolutely correct on that observation. And the other one from John Charles saying, if you want a non-conservative, and I know you don't mean politically conservative, but a non-conservative forecast, just look at the long-range outlooks of the usual suspects. And that goes to what I have said many, many times, and I'll say it again. The long-range forecast from the usual suspects, the same every year. Every year, it's going to be a cold and snowy winter in the east, because the eastern part of the United States is probably the one that is most sensitive to heavy snowfalls and cold weather, and has the biggest impact. So what gets people to click on that story, those headlines, is forecasting a cold and snowy winter in the Northeast, in the East, particularly in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. Because if you write something that says something else, no one's going to read it. So you're right. The usual suspects say the usual things every year. You know what? Broken clocks are right twice a day. And the fact remains that in terms of if you look at the frequency, and Joe, you'll agree with me on this, if you look at the frequency of really cold winters, they don't, even if you go back, there have been cold cycles and cold stretches where more often than not you get a string of years where temperatures are colder than normal. But for the most part, it's a haphazard type of event. You get a year here, a year there. Maybe you get 2 years in a row. Maybe you even string together 3 back to back. But to get it year after year after year just doesn't happen. That's just not how it works. So
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you. But as I said a few moments ago, maybe, and John Charles saying, the long range forecast from the usual suspects. Yeah, but maybe the usual suspects are beginning to change now in their projections for an upcoming winter, by, instead of just simply broad brushing and saying, oh, you're going to have dry weather, you're going to have much colder weather with lots of snow. Maybe in the coming years ahead, we'll start seeing more of a breakdown, more of a, all right, December, going to be a really bitter, frigid month, but it's going to get a lot milder by January, kind of breaking it down. And that's the only way you could do that, because as I said, nobody remembers the overview of things. The forecast averaged out over 90 days. Their minds change very quickly when all you have is just one singular case in point. The winter of 82-83 was an El Nino winter here in the northeastern United States. It was, in fact, when they looked at over everything, one of the warmest winters in 50 years, the winter of 82-83. But in that winter, for a couple of days, we had a blast of cold air come down across the Northeast, coinciding with a storm coming up from the south. What happened? Record-breaking snowfall over much of the northeastern in the corridor from Washington to Boston. When the winter was over, and people were asked, what kind of a winter was it? Did they say it was a mild winter? Did they say it was unusually warm temperature? No, the only thing they remembered was that one big snowfall, which occurred over a span of just a few days. Oh, it was a terrible winter. Oh, all that snow. So the mind can be, the idea of what a winter is going to be like can be colored by just one singular major event, and not in the overview of things from early December to late February. And maybe that's how the forecast should be done now is not looking at the whole winter. You should try to zero in on various parts of the winter, like maybe the early part will be cold, the middle part will be dry, the latter part will be wet and mild. That's maybe the only way that's going to settle things. So I fully expect tomorrow they're going to talk about La Nina. They're going to talk about unseasonable warmth in the northeastern United States, a mild winter, and then they're going to talk about, well, we're not certain. You know, the coin toss. It could be mild. It could be wet. It could be dry. We're not sure about that. You know, it's the same BS that just mentioned by John Charles and you. It's going to be the same story tomorrow, and I guarantee you that by tomorrow night, all the local news channels, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, when they're talking to Lonnie Quinn and Lee Goldberg and all their weather experts, they're going to say, well, looks like from what we just heard, it's going to be a mild winter, right? It's the same thing over and over again.
See the whole truth. Here's another great point. As a nation, the deep fear winter would be a trashed breadbasket and deeper winter potential, again, tearing up the crops. We can't do 2 years in a row without taking a big hit. And I think that's a valid point. With respect to the kind of winter it is, we really should be looking at it in terms of, well, where the impacts really matter. I mentioned about heating oil and natural gas and the costs, and he brings up the growing areas. Where you've got winter wheat, which is a big deal, okay, among other things. So and of course the longevity of the winter could also impact how soon do crops get planted in the spring. The early onset of a winter, well, the harvest is pretty much done with, and at least from the standpoint the weather, is cooperating. But places that do grow winter wheat, I'm guessing that they start growing that stuff now. So that's where these long range forecasts have importance. For the rest of humanity, it's unless we get to a point where you could sell your house in October and buy it back in April, because we're going to have a cold winter and you don't want to pay the heating bills and the electric bills and all the rest of it. I mean, it's not like you're going to sell your house and move just to escape a winter where temperatures are going to run a few degrees below average and the snowfall is going to run above average. And of course, we both know that those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. You could have a cold winter with very little snow. You could have a warm winter with a lot of snow. As you pointed out, 82, 83. There's numerous other examples of that along the way. So, we can go on. We can go on like this forever. I don't think we're not going to ever solve this problem, other than to point out that what you read and what you hear, in gossip rooms regarding, what the winter is going to be like, is a lot of it is predicated on I'm not talking about NOAA here or some of the more reputable longer range folks, but the rest of the crowd, I just it's not even worth your time.
Well, yeah, I should ask Jim Witt what he's forecasting for the upcoming winters. His famous Hudson Valley calendar has come out again, once again, used primarily, not primarily, used entirely to aid and help children's charities across the region. And I have not had a chance to look at Jim's long-range forecast. I'd be interested to know what he is thinking for this upcoming winter season.
Well, let's see if you want to get him on the show again. Let's aim for that.
Okay.
In the meantime, teleconnections, folks, just talking about long range. The NAO has been negative since the last week of December. I'm sorry, the last week of September. And maybe that slip of the tongue might be a future forecast. I don't know. But it's been negative the whole month of October so far, and most of the members have it negative through the end of the month. So that tells you that higher pressures in the North Atlantic, lower pressures in the mid latitudes. That should be a cooler look in the eastern states. But remember, the Canada is warm and is still showing signs of staying warm for the next couple of weeks. And the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, is positive now, going above the neutral line and going up between 1 and 2 standard deviations from the mean positive. And most of the members keep it positive through the end of the month. So I think the part here that's missing is the East Pacific oscillation. If you look at the upper flow, and this is just looking at it this morning, you don't have you do have a Canadian connection that has finally developed, but it's in the southern half of Canada, where it's been warm. You don't have the upper flow. If we follow the flow, folks, just watch the trough and the ridges. So here's your jet stream, okay? So, you got this upper low that's up in southern James Bay this morning. And we're getting air that's coming down from between Great Slave Lake and Lake Winnipeg. But guess what? There's no air, there's no flow from up here, okay? There's nothing coming, in any kind of Arctic flow that has penetrated reasonably far south. And we're going to swing this trough out to the east, and it lifts out, which, troughs do. You got this little blocking high that's kind of sitting there up in Greenland, forcing everything to go underneath us. So here comes the next trough, and as Joe pointed out at the end of the week, this one actually strengthens as it reaches the eastern seaboard going through the weekend. It looks like it's going to keep any low that develops along the coast, keep it well out to the east. But here at least, Joe, when you get into next week, just to illustrate the difference, if you follow the flow, our air is actually coming from northeastern Canada, almost from northwestern Greenland. That is colder than what we're seeing now with this shot this week. So this is the reason why the air mass for next weekend is likely to be colder. Meanwhile, take a look at what's going on out in the west. You got another deep trough in the deep upper low in the Gulf of Alaska and troughing into the western part of the United States. So Northwest Canada is not feeding any cold air into Canada itself, and working our way through the long range. Still kind of have this problem here. Take a look at now. Let's assume, and it's not going to happen. It's never going to look this way. But if you take a look at this, this upper air pattern in 2 weeks, which brings us to November 2nd, look at the flow in Canada. Again, it's coming up from the south. It's not, all the cold air, the cold air is kind of locked up here in northwest, well up into northwest Canada and over the Arctic regions. So you got to fix that, okay? By the way, if we take a look, this is 2 weeks from now. I'm curious as to what the 2-meter temperature anomaly is. Probably, in a pattern like that. So you're finally seeing, some cold coming into Western Canada. Again, this is because of the troughing that's in the western part of the United States. But look at Central and Eastern Canada, all above normal, way above normal in temperatures, near normal from New York State down into the southeast, a couple of patches a little above, a couple a little below. But look how warm it is, relatively speaking, up in Canada. You got to fix that. That has to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed until the East Pacific oscillation fixes itself. And
well, if you look at the 10 millibar map, what we lovingly sometimes refer to as the map that we look at, for the positioning of the polar vortex over the next couple of weeks, it appears that all the cold air is flowing into Norway and Sweden and Finland. That's the area that's getting all the cold. And in terms of Canada, Joe, it looks to me over the next couple of weeks, looking at that map, the 10 millibar map,
which I have up on the screen. It'll be up there in a second.
A large ridge of high pressure over the next couple of weeks builds over Canada, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it appears that if you're looking for cold air, especially over Canada, it ain't there, folks. Not with that ridge building up or inflating like a balloon. You want cold, again, you have to go to someplace like Norway, maybe even up in northern UK, Scotland,
yes.
For example. Those areas, that's the target area for cold for Canada, at least over the next couple of weeks. It ain't happening. I mean, there will be some occasional shots of cooler or chillier than normal air, but in the overview of things from now until early November, you want cold, it ain't happening here in the Western Hemisphere. You have to go to Siberia or maybe up into northern sections of Europe. That's where all the cold air is taking shape right now,
And by
or
the
in the
way,
next couple of weeks.
speaking of the nat gas price, it's more important to see the area that's actually going to have a real problem with this is Europe. They have a critical gas shortage, the natural gas shortage that has developed. And I pulled up the 10 millibar, but now I've actually gone to you struck my curiosity here with respect to the weather conditions in Europe, where I'm just going back to Saturday and now moving through this week. You do have colder than normal temperatures in the UK, in Norway, in Sweden, and then eventually moving into much of Western Europe. In fact, starting from late this week, going right through going into the last week of October. I mean, it's actually pretty cold across much of Europe, except for the UK and Norway gets a warm up with another. You can see when you follow the anomalies, you can actually see the weather fronts going by, where the weather fronts are. But late in the forecast period, because of that 10 millibar, I mean, it gets really cold in Norway, Western Germany, France, Spain, even down into northern Africa, pushing a little bit below average. That's kind of interesting. It also leads me to want to look at, since we really haven't spent any time with regards to a Siberian snow cover, we are through the middle of the month. I have not seen anybody post. I'm sure someone has. I have not seen any posts regarding the snow cover growth, the rate of snow cover growth. So it'd be interesting to see here. Now, this takes us through November 2nd. I mean, you do have snow, 2-week snow totals. This is not snow cover. Actually, even into Northern Ireland and the northern half of northernmost England and into Scotland, showing some snowfall there, and a good chunk of Eastern Europe on the edge of snowfall. Let's take a look at the what it looks like over Asia, because this is going to be more relevant. And there you go. I mean, the northern. You get a lot of snow supposed to fall on the northern flank of the Siberian snow cover growth area, and also on the westernmost flank of all of this. So that'll be interesting to see if that winds up verifying. And might as well do it. Let me bring up. I got this. Bring up the snow cover at the moment, and I'm only going to be able to do this kind of on an from like an eyeball. By eyeballing it, I really would like to see a graphic that shows the rate of snow cover growth and in comparison to other years. But we can go to, let's see, maps. Okay, that's the National Ice Center. I don't want that. So let's go to snow cover. Come on. Let's see if that's the right link. They changed the website, Joe, at the National Ice Center. So they put the snow maps there. Actually, it's kind of cool because they in some ways it's a little easier. So I'll bring up a 30-day animation of Asia and Europe in terms of actual snow cover growth. So there you are. It's I would say, just going back from memory, this goes right through October 16th. To me, it looks like the snow cover growth in Siberia is subpar. But I would like to see it in terms of a chart, but that does look subpar to me. And if we take a look at North America, well, why don't we look at Alaska? Let's do a 30-day animation of Alaska. Let's see what happens if I hit enlarge. Okay, well, that's sort of bigger. And I don't know, Joe. To me, if you look at that part of North America for where we are in the calendar, I would have expected to see much more snow cover than that.
You know, Greenland is always white.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means. I don't mean if that. Know if that means anything, but yeah. And we touched about the fact that a few years ago, from mid-October on, it seemed like all of Canada, or most of Canada, was in white. That they had unusually high amount of snow cover for so early in the season. That is most definitely not happening now. And certainly, if the pattern that we just saw of ridge of high pressure builds over Canada in the coming days and weeks, that ain't going to be happening even on into early November. So
Right.
It doesn't look all that good for snow right now.
It also seems to me,
And
again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but the yellow is the ice growth. And I would like to say, I've got to take a look at the charts later today and maybe talk about this tomorrow if you don't want to get a little time. But it does seem to me that we're seeing, faster ice growth on the Arctic side. Now, that could be because of where the polar vortex is positioned, which is up close to Siberia. But that's kind of interesting that I think the North America the snow cover growth is relatively subpar from what I'm looking at. I would like to see somebody with a chart to so that I'm not just I just doing it from memory and from eyeballing it. And if you want to look at all of North America, and I'll bring up that animation, that 7-day animation, you'll see, I mean, there's nothing. This is going very little. You see the snow from last week that happened in the Rockies, and it's there, and in the last few frames, it actually starts to shrink up. But I mean, you got to go north of 60 degrees north to find any snow, and that might be telling if that doesn't change. If we're sitting here in 2 weeks and looking at more of the same in terms of snow cover growth over North America, that's telling you that there's a problem.
absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I just wanted to mention something here on the chat board that Krishnapedia wanted to know that we should get Lee Goldberg on here, and Steve Lapointe point came on and said ABC won't allow their employees on here. Steve, you're right and you're wrong. ABC, I don't know. ABC might allow Lee Goldberg to come on, but all of the channels, and I'm talking about channels 2, channels 4, 5, and 7. We here at Joe and Joe have approached all of those guys and said, "How would you like to appear on the Joe and Joe show?" We have a good following. It's we talk nothing more than meteorology, and it's not CBS, NBC, ABC. It is their corporate entities that are keeping those personalities from appearing on Joe and Joe. At ABC, it's Disney, believe it or not. You think of Disney as such a wonderful place? You think of Disney as being the most wonderful place in the world? Yeah, maybe, but as a corporate entity, they do not want their employees appearing anywhere else than right there on ABC. NBC Universal. And again, we'd love to have Janice Hoff on, but Universal would preclude that. CBS, Lonnie Quinn, precluded from appearing because of CBS Viacom. You can no longer look at these as, just one entity, CBS, NBC, ABC. You now have to look at the corporate people who own those companies. Fox. That's why Nick Gregory, Nick has told me directly, I'd love to appear, but unfortunately Fox does not allow their people from appearing on programs other than their own. It's a sad situation, but that's the story. We'd love to have these people on. We'd love to chat with them about their careers. We wouldn't be, controversial. We wouldn't ask them anything, personal or something that would cause a problem otherwise.
Oh, we won't?
And I've been to
oh, darn.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Oh, darn.
I was waiting for you to say that. And I've been through this, and I know you've been through it. When I was at Cablevision on News 12, you're going to You're going to talk on ABC radio? Well, we have to find out what the questions are first before we allow you to go on there and talk to them. Or it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So that's why we are restricted from talking to any of these people. Will probably never appear. Of course, if they leave and they go somewhere else, or if they retire, yeah, that's another story. But right now, we simply cannot have these great people on our air because of that.
And I'll make my point in a second. Leon Probitsky hitting super chat. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated on this Sunday. Thank you very much. And the other thing is on that note, Joe, and I mean, I'm actually enjoying this conversation very much, if only because of the fact that we really don't have any weather to talk about going forward this week. It's going to be a nice week. So we went on a tangent. We somehow found our way to Siberian snow cover, and now we're talking about this, which is great. But we live in a culture where people, thanks to the internet, there is. I've always believed in the law of unintended consequences. You create something that is good, and somehow it winds up being not so good in some instances. And we live in a culture where there's an entire industry, Joe, there is an entire industry that whose job it is to go back and dig and find things that you might have said 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. The fact that you pulled Peggy Sue's pigtails when you were in kindergarten, and and stuck them down the inkwell, is now it's a crime, and you will be hung out to dry. And I mean, you've got people whose whole careers are blown away because of stuff, stupid crap that happened, a million years ago. But my point is, there's a whole industry built around this. So from the standpoint of the corporate heads that are watching all of this and saying, we have to protect our investment, we have to protect our employee, he might go on a show where something might be taken out of context, and the ball starts rolling downhill from there. So I in a way, I don't blame those people at all for not wanting to come on, if only because how much upside is there from coming on? There's not a whole lot of upside. And if you say something, because you and I, when we have conversations and we talk about this, because we've got nothing to lose. I mean, it's not like we work for anybody anymore. But somebody could come along and take something that someone says, and we get into a subject of climate change, and you get someone that maybe says something. If someone could come on, Joe, and say what I said at the beginning, talking about what's going on in the Arctic versus what's going on in the Antarctic, and twist that around to say that you're a denier, okay? And then take that and run with it. It gets on Twitter. There's a huge firestorm of morons on Twitter who can't read much beyond a noun, verb, noun. And of course, everybody's a climate expert. Everybody is an epidemiologist. Everybody is a brain surgeon, and it just it goes like this. So we get all the retired people who are old curmudgeons who have nothing to lose, or either that, or they're just like me. I don't care. And everybody's welcome to come on the show, and I don't blame them for not wanting, if they don't, if they can't come on because of the current climate situation. When I say climate, I mean the cancel culture that's out there. So, which of course I've now just offended the people who support the cancel culture, so they're probably going to be coming after me for being against the cancel culture.
One of my oldest and dearest friends, who was actually the best man at my wedding, his name is Sam Storch, and he now lives in the Boynton Beach area of Florida. And I just spoke to him a couple of nights ago, and he says, "Do you have any kind of a topic?" He said, "Because all of the societies now, all the astronomy clubs are doing their meetings virtually via Zoom." He said, "Do you have any kind of a talk that you can provide about weather or weather-related issues going hand in hand with astronomy?" And I said, "Oh, well, I developed a talk from something that my friend Joe Chiaffi, he didn't want to do a specific this type of topic at a library a few years ago, and he said, 'You want to do it?' And I developed a talk, and it was very successful. And I've done it many times for other libraries up here in our area. And I said, it's called the science of astrometeorology. Does weather or can weather be affected by the motions of the moon, by the output of the sun's energy, the planets, or whatever?" And I suggested that to him, and he called me back yesterday. He bounced that off uh, one of the people from the club, and he came back and says, does your talk involve anything in terms of global warming or climate change?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you have to talk about something like that. And if you're going to deal with it," he said, "then we can't we can't allow you to do the talk." And I
Why?
said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Why can't I do the talk?" He said, "Unfortunately, there are some members of the club who get very hyper and very heated under the collar when the very mention of climate change or global warming is mentioned. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear this. Remember that this is in Florida, Joe. This is down in Florida."
Hyper in which direction? I'm curious. I mean, are they hyper if you're if
Well,
I
if
hate
I
to put
talk
it. I
about the
hate to
fact that
put it like this, but I hate to put it like this, but saying, you know, are you for it or against it? I mean, because that's really what that's a silly way to look at it, but people look at it that
right,
way.
and
As if it's an issue, you know.
unfortunately they did. Unfortunately, I think, and while I try to play it as at best right down the middle in terms of climate change and global warming, try to present both sides of the issue. If I even mention the side that is talking about what we're doing to the atmosphere because of overpopulation and too much CO2 in the air, and everything, if I even touch or go across that line, the people who would be down in Florida would get very upset because
Okay.
they believe that this has nothing to do with anything other than it's crazy. But
Well, look,
I
I'm gonna be fair about this. I'm gonna piss off both sides, but I don't care. Okay. Um, if you marry your politics to what's going on, to science and data, okay, and not and decide before you even hear anything from someone, because what you have to say or what I have to say when we talk about data, um, that's not a point of view if we're talking about numbers, okay? But if we're talking about data, and someone is going to twist it into a political conversation, um, that's sad. I mean, that's really sad. I mean, it kind of shows me that, tells me that, well, I guess you're not really, you're not really willing to learn something that you really have no expertise. The person, not you, but the people that are listening to this have already have a predisposed notion of what's going, what all this stuff means, because they're all obviously experts. They're all climatologists, and they're all, they all work in the field. They all have doctorates. They've already have their minds made up. On the other hand, I will point out, by the way, it works both ways, because I remember back a number of years ago giving a talk to, I think it was the Rotary Club in Nassau County, and we were talking about it was a winter weather talk, and there was one person in the audience that uh, that was part of the group that was going. I wasn't even talking about climate change at all, and he just went on this rant and rave about climate change and how it's never going to snow again, and it's never going to get cold again, and the world is going to hell in a handbasket from that. But in a really, just did it in a really condescending and nasty way. So it's on both sides here. This is all about science and presentation of science. We're not, we're not here to take political positions when it comes to policy. Okay, when it comes to the redistribution of money, because that's what the argument's really all about. It's moving money from taking money from one group of people and giving it to somebody else. So I hear that sort of stuff, Joe. It just really pisses me off. It just does.
Well, in the talk, I bring up Dr. John Eddy, who was with NASA back in the 1970s. He had heard about how there was a paucity, a lack of sunspots during the late 16 and early 1700s. Didn't believe it. He said, no, this is ridiculous, and did some investigation, found that there was actually no sunspots or hardly any solar activity during that time frame, then went further and found out that there was no the weather during that time was what we call the Little Ice Age, and said, is there a correlation between the lack of sunspots when the sun is quiet and periods of cold weather? Now, this guy is not a quack. This guy was a highly regarded solar physicist with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, but this was in the 1970s. And since that time, others ran with that and said, we're going to keep watching the sun, and when the sun is quiet, that could mean that we're in for colder conditions long term. It's what's called the Maunder minimum, because it was first noted by a gentleman, a German scientist back in the 1800s, Gustav Maunder, and John Eddy, Dr. Eddy, referred to this as the Maunder minimum, the Maunder solar cycle. Well, now, here we are in the 2000s. And when I was at News 12, I went to a discussion being held here in the New York area. I brought the camera people with me or whatever, and talked to a gentleman by the name of Gavin Schmidt, also at NASA, also in terms of world and atmospheric studies and climatology. And I said, what do you think about this, Dr. Schmidt? Is this really true that the sun has any kind of say in regard to our weather? And he said, absolutely not. Now, remember, the guy in the 70s was with NASA. This guy I'm interviewing is with NASA. Two different opinions. I said, so if it were not the sun, what is it? And he pointed out volcanism, volcanoes. There was an unusual amount of volcanic activity during the 16 and 1700s, which put a lot of dust, caused a lot of aerosol cloud cover across the northern hemisphere, which reflected the sunlight, kept a lot of the sun's heat and energy from reaching the earth, which eventually led to that dramatic drop in temperature. So again, this is there was no correlation. Two distinct, diametrically opposite opinions on why we went through a cold spell here in the northern hemisphere. And I bring up in the discussion the fact that people are hoping for no sunspots and no solar activity because they say this might reverse global warming. But again, by mentioning that statement in regard to what these two scientists from NASA have mentioned, I'm apparently precluded from even talking about this or even mentioning it or even giving the talk to this group down in Florida because they don't want to hear anything about it if it has to do with any
But
part of global warming.
but the difference is, and this is, I think it's an important distinction here. If you look at those two people, and those two people gave you, they looked at data, okay? They looked at numbers, they looked at data, okay? And one came up with this conclusion, and one came up with this conclusion, okay? You could make a case that you could find a third person that will come into the equation and give them the same data and say, you know what, they're both wrong. So, but that's fine, okay? You're not deciding because ultimately, by different people looking at things, examining data, and coming to different conclusions, where one says yes, the other one says no, a third person will come in and say maybe, that if we keep going through that process, that eventually you get to a better answer. Somebody could come along and say that, well, maybe they're both wrong. But somebody could come along and say, you know what, maybe they're both right. It is the volcano and it is the sunspots. All right. But to decide that one of them is right and one of them is wrong because because you not only have to look at the data, but then you have to say, well, before I decide whether you're valid, where are you politically? That is the problem here. Okay, you should not be asked. That is not an appropriate question to ask, and it's not an appropriate way to decide whether, what the true answer is. So, and this is where I get heated. I always say when somebody asks me that question, ask me the question about global warming, is it true, is it not true? And I just say, look, let's look at the data. The data says that the Earth is warmed by 2 degrees or Celsius or whatever the number is in the last 50 or 60 or 70 years. You can't dispute that. That's the data. Okay. Now, if you want to get into a conversation about whether that's whether that is an issue, a social issue, okay, that is not a conversation I want to get into, okay, because that's a political discussion, and I don't want to and I don't want to talk about that. And then I get heat for answering the question that way, because I see it as a way of protecting myself. I don't want to, I don't want to get involved. There's nothing for me to gain by getting into a political conversation with somebody over data. All right. So I avoid it, and people get mad at me for avoiding it. The left side will say that I'm avoiding it because I'm a denier. Okay. The right side of the equation says I don't have the guts to admit that I'm afraid to admit what the answer. No, the answer is I really don't know what the answer is. I leave it to people that are higher pay grades than I am to make those decisions, to look at the stuff, because that's what they get paid for. They're smarter than me. Okay, there are people in this world, Joe, that are smarter than me.
Really?
Yes, there are, amazingly so. I thought I was on the top of the Einstein level. I guess it's I'm disappointed to find out that that's not the case. There are people that's smarter than me, and when I don't know something, I go to those people and I say, you know what, you're smarter than me. Tell me what I need. This is what I don't understand. Explain it to me. Okay. Nobody does that anymore. Everybody's an Einstein. You talk to anyone, you get these conversations, they all know everything. Okay. And what's really sad is they know everything, and they know it based on not by reading, not by research of a real, I'm not talking about some wayward internet site that's all BS. Okay. But I'm talking about real research, real stuff that's written on about these subject matters. No, they are watching. They're watching the political, they're watching the bent, rage-driven newscasts of various channels, be it CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and by the way, we all have, funny acronyms. Those acronyms with, like, CBS is the Can't Be Serious Network. NBC is Nothing But Crap. Okay, NBC was nothing but crap. ABC was always bad and confusing, and on it goes. I mean, if you're making these decisions, if you're coming to these conclusions, basing them on these corporate entities that make money by driving rage, okay, because that's what they're doing. They're making money on you by driving rage. They've not only stolen all your personal data, okay, Facebook. Not only have they stolen all your personal data, but they make money off your personal data, and they make money by making you angry.
All right. Well, I'm not going to continue. I just looked at the clock, and I can't believe that we've gone as long as we have today on a day where we really didn't have much to talk about in terms of weather. But we've been going now for 1 hour and 25 minutes.
I got a pot of soup that's been over boiling on the stove for the last hour and 25 minutes. So I have to get to that and turn it off. But my house does smell good. By the way, I baked. It was the second time I actually baked a huge. I made dough. I made my own dough, and I baked a big round thing of bread. And oh, the pool's gone. Yes, the pool is gone.
Well, I wanted to. Whoops, hold on. I just wanted to show you what it looked like yeah, here's what it looked like beforehand, and you could see them tearing They not only tore it down, they also took care of the play set. The play set was made by a company called Cedar Oaks, and when we first got this, and our kids were only 2, 3 years old, we used to treat this, or Renata used to treat this every year with like a shellac or something to keep it, in good condition. But over the years, and as the kids grew older, we just stopped doing that until finally the darn thing just started falling apart. And we just said, let's get rid of this as well as the pool. And yes, you're absolutely right. The pool is gone now. The play set is gone. So now we have a large area in the back with nothing. We may put a new above ground pool back there, but that's still in the planning stages, I think. But for those of you who are wondering, what happened and how things went, there you go. It's all gone now. So
yes,
voila.
All right, you're right. We've been at it for an hour and a half. Time to go bye. Okay, so thanks everybody for being here on a Sunday. Most appreciated. Get outside, enjoy the cool weather. I've already frozen to death when I went this morning at the dog park, where it was 35 and it was all shade. The sun still hadn't come over the top of the mountain yet, so wasn't able to use that to warm things up. It's already back to 60 here, by the way, so it warms up fairly quickly. So we'll see you tomorrow. Right. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And hopefully we'll have more weather to talk about.
We'll see. Have a good one.
Thanks for the super chat hit today, Leon. Most appreciated. And yes, Christinapedia, people are smarter than Joe Chaffee. It is. I know you're crushed. I know you're devastated. But there are people that are, a lot of people that are a lot smarter than, believe me, a lot smarter than I am, including Mr. Rayo, by the way. I definitely defer to Mr. Rayo. Yeah. No, I do.
No.
There's the frog, see? Where's your Messiah? By the way, I was watching CNBC, which I do every day, and I was watching David Faber, who is great. He's one of the anchors from the 9 o'clock hour. And he was for those of you who watch CNBC, I think he was going at it with Jim Cramer, and Jim Cramer comes on and does that quote. He's, yeah, see, how's your Messiah now? I fell off my chair. I just fell off my chair when he did that, because we've done that here so many times. Maybe he secretly watches this show. So
I wouldn't doubt it.
So if Mr. Kramer, if you watch this show, I've been a fan of yours for years. I think you do a spectacular job. So anyway, I thought that was so funny. Okay, have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, goodbye, boss.